My parents spent $50,000 on my sister's wedding and gave her a 10-minute toast. When I got married, they showed up late, left early, and didn't take a single photo with me. I found out later they went to my brother's barbecue instead. I never called them again. My name is David, I am 34, and I need to get something off my chest that has been sitting there like a cinder block for the last 2 years. This is the story of how I found out exactly where I stood with my own parents, and what I did about it. Spoiler alert, I stopped standing there. Let me give you some background. I grew up in a suburb outside of Richmond, Virginia. Nice neighborhood, decent school district, the kind of place where people mow their lawns on Saturday mornings and wave at each other from their driveways like they are in a commercial for home insurance. My parents, Jean and Lorraine, had 3 kids. My older sister Tully, me in the middle, and my younger brother Bowen. Classic middle child setup, and before you say it, yes, I have heard every middle child joke in existence. I used to laugh at them. I do not anymore. Growing up, I would not say I was neglected. That is too strong a word for what it was. It was more like I was background noise. Tully was the golden child. She was the first grandchild on both sides, the first to walk, the first to talk, the first to do literally anything, and my parents never let anyone forget it. She did pageants when she was little. She was homecoming queen. She got into a good college and studied communications, which honestly, I am still not sure is a real major, but my parents acted like she had been accepted into NASA. Every refrigerator in our house was a shrine to Tully accomplishments. Then there was Bowen, the baby, the one who could do no wrong because he was still figuring things out well into his late 20s. Bowen was charming in that reckless, lovable screw-up kind of way. He would crash my dad's truck and somehow turn it into a funny story at Thanksgiving dinner that had everyone in stitches. He dropped out of community college twice and my parents just said he was finding his path. If I had done that, I would have been finding my belongings on the front porch. And then there was me, David, the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who got good grades, stayed out of trouble, worked part-time jobs starting at 15, and never once asked my parents for a dime after I turned 18. I mowed lawns, I tutored kids in math, I saved up and bought my own car. A beat-up 2003 Corolla with a dent in the passenger door that looked like someone had kicked it, which, knowing the previous owner, someone probably had. I was proud of that car. My parents did not come to see it. They were at Tully's sorority formal that weekend. Here's the thing. I am not telling you all this so you will feel sorry for me. I had a fine childhood. Nobody hit me, nobody starved me, nobody locked me in a closet. But there is a specific kind of pain that comes from being consistently overlooked by the people who are supposed to see you first. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is showing up to your high school graduation and realizing your parents took 47 photos of Tully graduation 2 years earlier and took exactly 3 of yours, one of which was blurry because my mom was apparently waving at someone she knew in the bleachers while pressing the shutter button. I went to Virginia Tech, studied engineering, graduated with honors, and got a solid job at a civil engineering firm in Charlotte. I worked my way up, made decent money, bought a little house. Nothing flashy, just mine. Along the way, I met the love of my life, a woman named Sutton. She was a pediatric nurse with a laugh that could fill an entire room and a backbone made of reinforced steel. She did not take crap from anyone, and she loved me in this fierce, uncompromising way that I honestly did not know I was allowed to have. Sutton noticed things about my family before I was ready to admit them. She would come to holiday dinners and watch the way my mom would spend 45 minutes talking about Tully's new apartment or Bowen's latest hobby, and then ask me one question about work before changing the subject. She would see my dad slap Bowen on the back and call him champ, and then give me a polite nod like I was a neighbor he was acknowledging across a parking lot. Sutton would drive us home afterward and say, very carefully, "Do you notice how they talk to you differently?" And I would say, "That is just how they are." And she would squeeze my hand and let it go. For a while, the first time I really felt the sting was at Thanksgiving, about 3 years before my wedding. My mom had this tradition of going around the table and saying something she was thankful for about each person. When she got to Tully, she talked for 5 minutes about how proud she was, how Tully had grown into such an incredible woman, how her heart was so full watching her daughter thrive. When she got to Bowen, she teared up and said he was the light of every room he walks into. When she got to me, she paused, smiled, and said, "And David, we are thankful you could make the drive." That was it. Sutton fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I just nodded and kept eating. You get good at that after a while. Nodding and eating. When Tully got engaged to her fiancé, a guy named Corbin who sold pharmaceutical equipment and had the personality of a wet paper towel, my parents lost their minds with excitement. And look, I get it. Your daughter is getting married. That is a big deal. But what happened next set the tone for everything that came after. My parents threw Tully an engagement party at a country club. They rented the space, hired a caterer, had a live band. My mom gave a speech that lasted 20 minutes and made at least 6 people cry. My dad handed Corbin a bottle of 30-year scotch and said, "Welcome to the family, son." It was beautiful. Genuinely. I was happy for Tully. I clapped. I hugged her. I meant it. Over the next year, the wedding planning consumed my parents' entire existence. My mom went to every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every venue walkthrough. My dad wrote checks without blinking. The final tally, which I only found out about later, was just north of $50,000. 50 grand. For one day. The wedding was at a vineyard outside of Charlottesville with string lights and a live jazz band, and an open bar that had a signature cocktail named after Tully. My mom's dress cost more than my first semester of college. And at the reception, my dad stood up and gave a 10-minute toast about Tully that was so heartfelt, so detailed, so specific to who she was as a person, that I remember sitting at my table thinking, he actually knows her. He really, truly knows her. I did not feel jealous in that moment. I felt something worse. I felt invisible. 6 months after Tully's wedding, I proposed to Sutton. I did it on a hiking trail we loved, with a ring I had saved for over a year to buy. She said yes before I even finished asking. We were both crying. We were both laughing. And for about 45 minutes, it was the most perfect moment of my life. I called my parents that night to tell them. My mom said, "Oh, that is wonderful, honey. Hey, did your sister tell you she and Corbin are thinking about buying a house in the Fan District?" That was it. No questions about the proposal. No asking to see the ring. No tell us everything. Just a hard left into Tully real estate plans. My dad got on the phone for about 30 seconds and said, "Good for you, bud. She seems like a nice girl." A nice girl. I had been with Sutton for 4 years at that point. They had had dinner with her at least a dozen times. A nice girl. Like I had told him, I was bringing a co-worker to a company picnic. I told myself it was fine. I told myself they would come around once the wedding planning started. I told myself a lot of things that year. Sutton did not tell herself any of those things. She just watched. And she waited. Because she knew what was coming even if I did not. Sutton and I planned our wedding ourselves. We set a date for the following October, found a beautiful little venue about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte, a restored barn on a farm property with rolling hills and old oak trees. It was not a vineyard with a jazz band and a signature cocktail. It was us. Simple, warm, personal. We were paying for the whole thing out of our own pockets, which meant we had a budget of about $12,000. That is a far cry from 50 grand, but we made it work. Sutton found her dress at a consignment shop and looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. I am not exaggerating. The woman could wear a trash bag and stop traffic. I called my mom to tell her about the venue and the date, and I could hear her typing on her computer in the background. She said, "That sounds nice. Honey, is it outdoors?" I said yes. She said, "Well, let us hope it does not rain." That was her contribution to my wedding planning. Let us hope it does not rain. Meanwhile, I had watched this woman spend 14 months micromanaging the angle of napkin folds at Tully reception. But sure, Mom. Let us hope it does not rain. I asked my parents if they wanted to be involved. I asked more than once. I invited my mom to come look at the venue with us. She said she was busy that weekend. I asked if she wanted to help Sutton pick flowers. She said she did not really have an eye for that sort of thing. I asked my dad if he wanted to go suit shopping with me. He said he already had a suit that worked fine. Every door I opened, they politely closed. Not with a slam, just with a quiet click. That is how they always did it. Quietly. Sutton parents, Hank and Ruthie, were the opposite. Hank drove up from Asheville 3 times to help me build the arbor we were going to get married under. The man was 62 years old and out there with a circular saw at 7 in the morning, whistling Creedence Clearwater Revival songs while I handed him boards. Ruthie took Sutton to every appointment, helped address every invitation by hand, and cried happy tears at least once a week leading up to the wedding. They treated me like a son from day one. Not like a nice boy their daughter was dating. Like a son. The wedding was on a Saturday. Ceremony at 4 in the afternoon. I had told my parents the date, the time, and the location no fewer than 6 times. I sent them a formal invitation. I sent a follow-up text. I even had Tully confirm they knew, and she told me, "Yes, David, they know. Stop being so neurotic." Neurotic. That is what caring looked like to my family. Neurotic. The morning of the wedding, I was at the venue by 9. Sutton was getting ready at a little cottage on the property with her bridesmaids and her mom. I was in the barn with my best man, a guy named Riggins who I had been friends with since college. Riggins was the kind of friend who would help you move a couch up 3 flights of stairs and never mention it again. He could also tie a Windsor knot in under 10 seconds, which came in handy that morning because my hands were shaking. At around 2 in the afternoon, I started getting a weird feeling. My parents had not called, had not texted, had not asked for directions, which they would have needed because they had never been to the venue. I texted my mom, "Hey, just checking in, you guys on your way?" No response for 40 minutes. Then she wrote back, "Running a little behind, be there soon." I told myself it was fine. Traffic, maybe. A late start. Normal stuff. The ceremony started at 4. I was standing at the altar, looking out at our guests, about 70 people total. Sutton parents were in the front row. Ruthie was already dabbing her eyes. Hank was sitting up straight with his hands on his knees, looking like a proud general. My side had Riggins standing next to me, a few of my cousins scattered around, and 2 empty chairs in the front row with reserved signs on them. The music started. Sutton came down the aisle on her dad's arm, and I swear every thought I had ever had left my brain except one. That is my wife. She was glowing. I could not see anything else. We said our vows, which we had written ourselves. She made me laugh. I made her cry. It was perfect. And through the whole thing, those 2 chairs stayed empty. My parents showed up at 4:52. I know the exact time because Riggins checked his watch and muttered it under his breath. They walked in during the cocktail hour, almost an hour after the ceremony had ended. My mom was wearing a blouse and slacks, not even dressed for a wedding. My dad had on khakis and a polo shirt, like he was about to play 9 holes. They walked up to me and my mom hugged me and said, "Sorry we are late. Traffic was a nightmare." No acknowledgement that they had missed the ceremony. No horror on their faces. No, "Oh my God, David, we are so sorry." Just traffic was a nightmare, like they were late to a dentist appointment. I could feel Sutton's hand on my back, steadying me. I introduced them to a few people. My mom spent about 10 minutes talking to Tully, who had at least shown up on time and was sitting with Corbin at their table looking bored. My dad shook Hank's hand and said, "Nice place you got here," like Hank owned the venue. He did not. My dad just had not listened to anything I had told him about the wedding. During dinner, my parents sat at their assigned table and barely spoke to anyone. They did not mingle. They did not dance. They did not come up to us during the toasts. Riggins gave a best man speech that had the whole barn laughing and crying, and my parents sat there with polite smiles like they were watching a documentary about someone else's family. At 7:30, not even 3 hours after they had arrived, my mom came up to me and said, "We are going to head out, honey. Your dad is tired." I looked at her and said, "You just got here." She patted my arm and said, "It was a lovely evening, David. Congratulations." They left. They did not say goodbye to Sutton. They did not take a single photo with me. Not one. My wedding photographer later told me she had tried to gather both families for a group shot and my parents had already walked to their car. Let that sink in. The photographer, a stranger who I was paying $300, cared more about documenting my wedding than my own parents did. I did not cry that night. I danced with my wife, I laughed with my friends, I ate cake, and I pushed it all down into a little box and locked it. But later that night, after everyone had gone home and Sutton and I were alone in the cottage, she looked at me and said, "You deserve so much better than that." And I could not hold it anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed and I cried for the first time in I do not know how many years. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted tears from a man who had finally run out of excuses for the people who were supposed to love him the most. The week after the wedding, I found out where my parents actually went that day. And I did not find out because they told me. I found out because Bowen posted about it on social media. See, Bowen had decided to throw a barbecue at his place that same Saturday. A barbecue. Not a birthday, not a graduation, not any kind of milestone. Just a regular, run-of-the-mill, burgers on the grill, lawn chairs in the driveway barbecue. And my parents went. They went to Bowen's barbecue instead of my wedding ceremony. Or rather, they went to Bowen's barbecue first, stayed for a few hours, and then drove to my wedding after the fact like it was an afterthought. Like it was a stop on the way home from something more important. Bowen had posted a photo of my dad flipping burgers with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other, grinning like he had just won the lottery. My mom was in the background, sitting in a lawn chair, laughing at something someone said. The timestamp on the photo was 3:47 in the afternoon. My ceremony started at 4. They were at a barbecue, drinking beer and laughing, while I was standing at an altar wondering where they were. I stared at that photo for a long time. Sutton found me sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning, phone in my hand, just staring at it. She did not say I told you so. She did not say anything at first. She just sat down next to me and put her head on my shoulder. After a while she said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I do not know." And she said, "That is okay. You do not have to know tonight. But I think you know that something has to change." She was right. Something had to change. But I was not ready yet. I spent the next few weeks going through what I can only describe as a fog. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner. I went to bed. But inside, I was replaying every moment of my childhood, every holiday, every phone call, every time I had been the one to reach out first, and I started keeping a mental tally. It was not healthy, but it was necessary. I needed to see the full picture before I could decide what to do with it. I called my Aunt Waverly, my mom's older sister, because she had always been the one person in the family who saw me clearly. Waverly was a retired schoolteacher who lived in a little house in Roanoke and had no patience for nonsense. I told her what happened at the wedding. I told her about the barbecue. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "David, I love my sister, but she has been sleepwalking through your life since you were born. I have watched it for 34 years, and it makes me sick." I asked her why she never said anything. She said, "I have said things. They do not listen. Your mother thinks because you turned out fine, she did her job. She does not understand that you turned out fine in spite of her, not because of her." That conversation broke something open in me. Not in a bad way. In the way that a bone has to be re-broken before it can heal properly. I started seeing a therapist, a guy named Dr. Leland, who had a quiet office with a leather chair and a clock that ticked so loud I thought about stealing the batteries out of it every session. But he was good, really good. He helped me understand that what I had experienced was not dramatic abuse, but it was neglect. Emotional neglect. The kind that does not leave bruises, but leaves gaps. Gaps in your sense of self-worth. Gaps in your ability to trust that people actually care about you. Gaps that you spend your whole life trying to fill by being useful, being reliable, being the one who never causes problems, because maybe if you are easy enough to deal with, they will finally notice you. Dr. Leland asked me a question during our third session that I still think about. He said, "David, if you stop calling your parents tomorrow, how long do you think it would take them to call you?" I did not have an answer. He said, "I think you do." And he was right. I did. I just did not want to say it out loud. While I was doing the emotional work, something unexpected happened on the professional side. My firm landed a massive contract with the city of Charlotte to redesign a series of aging bridges. It was a $4.2 million project, and my boss, a woman named Sloan who had been mentoring me for years, put me in charge of it. Just like that. She called me into her office, closed the door, and said, "David, you are the best structural engineer I have, and everyone in this building knows it except apparently you. So I am giving you this project, and you are going to crush it, and then you are going to stop pretending you are not exceptional." I walked out of that meeting feeling like I had been hit by a truck full of compliments. The bridge project consumed my life for the next several months, but in the best way. I was leading a team of 12 engineers, presenting to city council members, collaborating with architects and environmental consultants. I was doing work that mattered, that people could see, that would literally hold weight for the next 50 years. There is something deeply healing about building things that are designed to last when you come from people who treated you like you were temporary. Sutton and I also started building our life together in earnest. We bought a bigger house in a neighborhood with old trees and wide sidewalks. She got promoted to charge nurse at her hospital. We adopted a dog, a ridiculous-looking mutt named Colonel who had one ear that stood up and one that flopped down and a tail that never stopped wagging. We had friends over for dinner on weekends. We went to farmers markets on Sunday mornings. We were happy, not in a showy, social media kind of way. In a real, bone-deep, this is what life is supposed to feel like kind of way. During this time, I did not call my parents. Not once. And Dr. Leland's question echoed in my head every single day. How long before they call you? The answer, it turned out, was 11 weeks. 11 weeks before my mother sent me a text that said, "Hey honey, just checking in. Tully said you have been busy with work. Not I miss you. Not I have been thinking about you. Not I am sorry we showed up late to your wedding and left early and went to your brother's barbecue instead. Just Tully said you have been busy." Even my absence was filtered through my sister. Even my silence had to be explained by someone else. I did not respond. And that decision, that tiny, terrifying decision to just not pick up the phone, was the beginning of everything changing. Because for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. Not to be petty, not to be vindictive, but because I had finally realized that the people who are supposed to fill your cup should not be the ones draining it. And if they cannot see you when you are standing right in front of them, then maybe it is time to stop standing there and go somewhere where you do not have to beg to be seen. 6 months of silence. That is how long it went before things really started to move. During that time, I did not reach out to my parents, and they made exactly 2 more attempts to contact me. One was a group text my mom sent to all 3 kids about Thanksgiving plans. The other was my dad calling me on a random Tuesday because he needed help figuring out how to set up a new router. Not to talk, not to check in, to troubleshoot his internet. I let it go to voicemail. He never called back. Thanksgiving came and went. Sutton and I spent it with Hank and Ruthie in Asheville. Hank deep-fried a turkey in the backyard and almost set his shed on fire, which became the funniest story of the year. Ruthie made her famous sweet potato casserole and spent half the night teaching Sutton the recipe, swearing her to secrecy like it was a matter of national security. Colonel sat under the table and ate scraps that Hank kept accidentally dropping, which everyone knew was not accidental at all. It was the best Thanksgiving I had ever had, and my parents were not there, and I did not miss them. That realization hit me harder than I expected. Around January, I got a call from Tully. This was unusual because Tully and I had the kind of sibling relationship where we texted on birthdays and saw each other at family events, and that was about it. She was not cruel to me, just indifferent, which in some ways was worse because at least cruelty would have meant she was thinking about me. She called to tell me that Mom and Dad were upset that I had skipped Thanksgiving. I said I did not skip it. I spent it with people who wanted me there. She got quiet and then said, "David, they are your parents." I said, "I am aware." She said, "You are being dramatic." I said, "Tully, they showed up an hour late to my wedding, stayed for less than 3 hours, did not take a single photo with me, and I found out from social media that they were at Bowen's barbecue instead of my ceremony. At what point am I allowed to be upset about that without being called dramatic?" She did not have an answer for that. She said she would talk to them. I told her not to bother. I was done having other people translate my feelings to my parents. If they wanted to know how I felt, they could ask me directly, but we both knew they would not. Then something happened in March that changed everything. My bridge project won a regional engineering award. It was a big deal in our industry. The Charlotte Observer ran a story about it with my name and photo. The article talked about the innovative design approach, the environmental considerations, and how the project had come in under budget and ahead of schedule. Sloan threw a party at the office. The mayor's office sent a letter. I was interviewed on a local news segment that aired on a Thursday evening. I did not tell my parents. I did not have to. Tully saw the news segment and told them. My mom called me the next day. First time she had actually picked up the phone and dialed my number in over 7 months. She said, "David, we saw you on the news. That is so exciting." I said, "Thank you." She said, "Your father and I are so proud." And I said, "Mom, I need to ask you something. Do you remember what day my wedding was?" She paused and said, "Of course I do." I said, "Do you remember what time the ceremony started?" Another pause. "4 o'clock," she said, though she did not sound confident. I said, "You showed up at 4:52. Do you remember why?" Long silence. She said, "David, we have been over this. There was traffic." I said, "There was not traffic, Mom. You were at Bowen's barbecue. I saw the photos. Dad was flipping burgers at 3:47. My ceremony was at 4. You chose a barbecue over watching your son get married." She started to say something, and I cut her off. I said, "I am not calling to fight. I am calling because you said you are proud of me, and I need you to understand that those words do not mean anything to me right now. You were not proud enough to show up on time to the most important day of my life. You were not proud enough to take a single photo with me. You were not proud enough to stay past 7:30. You spent $50,000 on Tully's wedding and did not even bring a card to mine. I am glad you saw me on the news, Mom. But I needed you to see me long before that. She was crying by the end. She said, I did not realize it was that bad. And that sentence, I did not realize it was that bad, told me everything I needed to know. Because it was not that she did not know. It was that she had never bothered to look. I talked to Dr. Leland about the call. He said something that stuck with me. He said, David, you just did something incredibly brave. You told your mother the truth without anger, without revenge, without cruelty. You just stated facts. And facts are the most powerful weapon a person who has been gaslit can have. He was right. I had not yelled. I had not cursed. I had not brought up every grievance from the last 34 years. I had simply held up a mirror and let her see what was in it. After that call, things started happening fast. My mom told my dad. My dad called me, which shocked me because my dad had called me maybe 5 times in my adult life that were not about tech support or logistics. He said, your mother is really upset. I said, I understand that. He said, I think we need to sit down and talk as a family. I said, I am open to that, but I need you to know that a conversation is not the same as an apology, and I am not interested in one without the other. He said, fair enough. We agreed to meet at their house in 2 weeks. Sutton helped me prepare. Not in a manipulative way, not like I was going into a legal deposition. She just helped me organize my thoughts. She asked me what I wanted from the conversation. Not what I wanted to say, but what outcome I actually wanted. And I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I said, I want them to see me. Not the engineer, not the guy on the news, not the reliable middle child who never causes problems. I want them to see David, the one they have been walking past for 34 years. And if they cannot do that, then I want them to understand why I am not going to keep standing in the hallway waiting for them to notice. Riggins came over the night before the meeting. He brought a 6-pack and sat on my porch with me while Colonel chewed on a stick between us. He said, you know, most people would have just screamed at them at the wedding and been done with it. I said, I thought about it. He said, but you did not. You waited, you worked on yourself, you built your life, and now you are going in there with receipts and composure. That is not revenge, man. That is growth. And if they cannot handle it, that is on them. He was right. Whatever happened in that house in 2 weeks, I was walking in as the best version of myself. Not to impress them, not to prove anything, but because I owed it to myself and to Sutton and to the life we had built to stop shrinking for people who never asked me to grow in the first place. The drive to my parents' house took about 3 hours. Sutton came with me. She did not have to. I told her she could stay home, that this was my thing to deal with. She looked at me like I had just suggested she skip oxygen for the afternoon and said, David, I watched these people show up late to your wedding in khakis. I am coming. So she came. We pulled into the driveway at noon on a Saturday. The house looked the same as it always did. Azaleas out front, American flag on the porch, my dad's truck in the driveway. Bowen's car was there too, which I had not expected. And Tully's SUV. My stomach dropped. I looked at Sutton and said, this was supposed to be a conversation with my parents. She said, well, it looks like it just became a family meeting. Stay calm. You know what you want to say? We walked in, and they were all sitting in the living room like a jury. My mom and dad on the couch, Tully in the armchair, Bowen leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Corbin was notably absent, which was fine because honestly I always forgot he existed until someone reminded me. My mom stood up and tried to hug me. I let her, but I did not squeeze back. My dad nodded. Bowen said, hey man. Tully looked at Sutton and managed a tight smile. My mom started. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking since our phone call. She said she was sorry if I felt like I had been overlooked. And I stopped her right there. I said, Mom, I need you to hear the difference between what you just said and what I need you to say. You said sorry if I felt overlooked. That means you are apologizing for my feelings, not for what you did. I am not here because of how I feel. I am here because of what happened. You showed up almost an hour late to my wedding. You left before 8. You did not take a single photo with me or my wife. And you went to Bowen's barbecue first. Those are not feelings. Those are facts. My dad spoke up. He said, we made a mistake, David. We should have managed our time better that day. I said, Dad, this is not about time management. This is about priority. You spent $50,000 on Tully's wedding. You gave a 10-minute toast. You were at every fitting, every tasting, every walkthrough. When I got engaged, Mom changed the subject to Tully's house hunt. When I asked you to go suit shopping, you said you had one that worked fine. This is not one bad day. This is 34 years of me being an afterthought in this family. And the wedding was just the day it became impossible to ignore. The room got very quiet. Tully shifted in her seat. Bowen looked at the floor. My mom started crying. And here's the thing. I did not feel good about making her cry. I did not feel satisfied. I felt sad. Because all I had ever wanted was for these people to see me. And even now, sitting right in front of them, saying the words as clearly as I could, I was not sure they were actually hearing me. Bowen, to my surprise, was the first one to say something real. He said, "David, I did not know the barbecue was on the same day as your wedding. I swear I did not. Mom and Dad showed up, and I just figured the timing worked out. I never would have thrown it that day if I had known." I looked at him, and I believed him. Bowen was oblivious, but he was not malicious. He had never been told about the conflict because my parents had not considered it a conflict. That is how insignificant my wedding was to them. It did not even register as a scheduling issue. Tully was quieter. She finally said, "I know they treat us differently. I have always known. I just did not think it was my place to say anything." I said, "Tully, you called me dramatic when I tried to talk about it." She winced. She said, "I know. I am sorry for that. That was wrong." I nodded. It was not everything I needed from her, but it was something. Then my dad said something that actually got to me. He said, "David, I do not know how to explain it. You were always so capable. You never needed us. You figured everything out on your own. And I think somewhere along the way, we stopped checking in because we assumed you were fine." And I said, "Dad, I was not fine. I was just quiet about it." There is a difference between a kid who does not need help and a kid who has learned not to ask for it because he knows he will not get it. His face changed when I said that. I could see it land. For maybe the first time in my life, I watched my father actually hear me. My mom said, "What can we do?" And I said, "Honestly, I do not know if there is anything you can do right now. I am not here to give you a checklist so you can feel better about this. I am here to tell you the truth. And the truth is that I have built a life that is good and full and happy, and I did it without you. Not because I wanted to, but because you were not there. And I am not going to pretend that is okay just so everyone in this room can feel comfortable." Sutton, who had been silent the whole time, spoke up once. She said, "I have watched David make excuse after excuse for all of you for years. He has defended you to me when I told him what I saw. He has blamed himself for not being interesting enough, not being loud enough, not being enough. And I need every person in this room to understand that David is the most enough person I have ever met. If you cannot see that, the problem is not with him." I almost lost it when she said that. Riggins would have been proud. Hank definitely would have cried. We left an hour later. There was no big dramatic resolution. My parents did not fall to their knees and beg for forgiveness. Real life does not work like that. But something shifted. My mom walked us to the car, and she looked at me, and she said, "I am sorry, David. Not sorry if you felt. Not sorry we were late. Just I am sorry." And she said it looking me in the eyes for what felt like the first time in my life. That was 2 years ago. The relationship with my parents is not fixed. I am not sure it ever will be, and I have made peace with that. But it is different. They call now. Not every week, but regularly. My mom asks about my work. My dad came to Charlotte last fall to see the bridges I designed, and he stood on one of them and said, "My son built this," to a stranger walking by, and the stranger had no idea what was happening, but said congratulations anyway. It was awkward and weird, and it meant more to me than the 10-minute toast he gave at Tully's wedding ever could. Sutton and I are expecting our first child this summer. When I told my parents, my mom cried again, but this time they were the right kind of tears. She asked if she could help with the nursery. I said yes. It is a small thing, but small things are how you rebuild. Bowen and I actually got closer through all of this. He felt genuinely terrible about the barbecue situation and has gone out of his way to show up for me since. He drove down for my birthday last year with a cooler full of steaks and a card that said, "To the brother I should have paid more attention to." I am not going to lie, I got a little misty reading that one. As for me, I am good. Really good. I have a wife who loves me like it is her full-time job, a career that challenges me, a dog who thinks I am the greatest human alive, and a baby on the way. I do not hold bitterness toward my parents. Bitterness is heavy, and I spent too many years carrying weight that was not mine. But I do hold boundaries. Firm, clear, unapologetic boundaries. Because I learned something important through all of this. You teach people how to treat you. And for 34 years, I taught my parents that it was okay to overlook me by never saying a word about it. The moment I found my voice, everything changed. Not overnight, not perfectly, but it changed. If you are reading this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are not too sensitive. You are not being dramatic. And you are not asking for too much by wanting the people who are supposed to love you to actually show up. You deserve to be seen. And if they will not see you, build a life so bright that you do not need them to.